My sister screamed I tried to poison her at baby shower. Parents backed her, but cameras proved the truth. They apologized. I refused to forgive. 9 months ago, I had one of the most painful experiences of my life. I experienced a miscarriage. When my husband, Oliver, and I discovered we were expecting, everything felt full of optimism and possibility. We both felt ecstatic. We immediately began planning for our future as parents. We'd spend hours discussing what the baby might look like, who they might grow up to be, and what sort of parents we'd be. Oliver was wonderfully supportive, and it felt amazing to be on this beautiful adventure together. We didn't waste time and started converting our spare room into a nursery for our newborn. We started painting the walls a light, relaxing tone and spoke about what kind of furnishings would work best. Every tiny detail mattered. I bought loads of books for first-time mothers, anxious to learn everything I could about pregnancy, labor, and baby care. It was a joyous time, full with enthusiasm and anticipation. Then, everything changed in an instant. It was late one night when I awoke suddenly with a strong, disturbing sense that something was wrong. There was no evident explanation for it, only a pervasive sensation of dread. I dashed to the restroom, my pulse racing in my chest. When I felt the wetness in my pants and saw the blood, I knew something was very wrong. I immediately began sobbing uncontrollably. It's difficult to describe the level of dread and sadness I was experiencing at the time. The noise must have shocked Oliver, as he dashed in, perplexity and terror written all over his face. He realized what was going on, and immediately hurried me to the hospital. The ride seemed to last forever, with each second dragging on uncomfortably. When we eventually arrived and the physicians checked me, I felt as if I was holding my breath, clinging to any shred of hope that the baby would be well. But then the doctor kindly gave the news that no expectant parent ever wants to hear. I'd lost the baby. Hearing those remarks felt like a strike to the gut. I was overcome with shock, bewilderment, and a terrible sense of loss. The entire situation was quite distressing. Looking back, I'm still not sure how my husband, Oliver, remained so strong throughout those days, because I was absolutely devastated. I couldn't function after we lost our baby. I couldn't eat, sleep, or even find the energy to speak. It seemed as if the entire world had gone dark, and I was lost in a fog of grief that I couldn't shake. I was working at the time, but I needed to take 2 weeks off to allow myself to break down. Those 2 weeks were filled with nothing but tears and an immense despair that hung on me like a heavy blanket. I scarcely left my bed. Getting up every morning felt like a painful reminder of what had occurred. I'd open my eyes and, for a brief while, forget. Then reality would hit, and I'd realize I had lost our baby. It was terrible. All I wanted to do was sleep, because sleeping allowed me to avoid feeling the anguish. During this time, my family rallied around me in ways that I will always be thankful for. My parents and sister were always checking on me. Every day someone would call, text, or stop by to talk to me, despite the fact that I wasn't very talkative. My cousins and relatives would pay me visits, bringing me food and fruits that I couldn't provide for myself. But no matter how many people came, or how much they cared, I felt emotionally numb. Despite their best attempts, there was nothing they could say to alleviate the sadness. My hubby was there for me through it all. Oliver took care of me when I was unable to care for myself. He didn't compel me to chat or pretend everything was fine. Instead, he remained patient, quietly helping me in whatever way he could. He brought meals even though I could hardly touch them. When words seemed impossible to say, he would sit with me in silence. Without him, I doubt I would have made it through those weeks. He told me repeatedly that we would not give up. He believed that we could try again after I had healed physically and emotionally. His faith and optimism were the only things keeping me from falling entirely into despair. I slowly began to recover. It wasn't immediate or easy. I chose to go back to work because I wanted something to take my mind off of the never-ending cycle of sadness and pain I was experiencing. Work provided me with a schedule and something else to focus on, allowing me to avoid thinking about the baby all the time. However, at quiet moments, the pain would return, and I realized I needed more than simply distraction. I needed a connection. So I joined a few Facebook groups for people who had experienced miscarriages. At first I wasn't sure whether it would help. But as I read through other people's stories, I realized how many people had gone through the same ordeal I was. It was reassuring to know that I wasn't alone, that my emotions were normal, and that others had suffered such a devastating loss. I started opening up more and sharing my tale, and as a result, I began to understand what I was going through. Right now I'm still grieving. I don't think that element will ever completely go gone. But I've gotten to the point where I no longer continuously blame myself. That required time and a lot of emotional effort. There have been countless times when I wondered whether it was my fault, if I had done something wrong. However, I now believe that some situations are simply beyond our control. I've embraced the mindset that whatever is meant to be will be, and it's brought me calm. I've worked hard on my mending to get this far, and I'm proud of the progress. But recently something happened that shook me to my core, and I believe it has undone some of the healing I've worked so hard for. It happened at my sister's baby shower, which was last week. For reference, my sister Elise learned she was pregnant approximately 2 months ago. She shared her wonderful news with our entire family almost immediately, but for some reason, she did not tell me directly. I had to find out from one of our cousins, which threw me completely off guard. It stung, not because I wasn't thrilled for her, but because Elise and I had always gotten along. She had been there for me, particularly during my miscarriage, providing comfort and support when I needed it the most. So I was startled and, frankly, disappointed that she hadn't phoned me to share her good news. When I told her about it later, I tried not to let my emotions get the best of me. I didn't want to make her feel awful, but I also wanted to know why she hadn't felt comfortable coming to me directly. She stated that she hadn't told me because she didn't want to spoil my mood by announcing her pregnancy while I was still grieving the loss of my own baby. I could tell she didn't mean to hurt me. She didn't want to exacerbate my suffering, thus hiding the news from me was her way of preserving my feelings. But I told her that whatever I was going through, I would always be glad for her. I made it plain that she should never feel unable to express her delight with me simply because I was still grieving. I stated that, despite my anguish, I would continue to adore her baby as much as I had before. I was still going to be her baby's aunt, and I wanted to be a part of this new stage in her life. I wanted her to know that my love for her and her kid had not been reduced by my loss. She appeared relieved after our chat, grateful that I was so sympathetic. She promised to keep me updated from then on, which seemed like a positive step forward. I've tried to be as supportive of Elise as possible over the last few weeks, especially because she's dealing with this pregnancy on her own. Elise is now going through a divorce with her husband Lucas. Everyone in our family, including myself, was shocked to learn of their divorce. I'd always felt Lucas was a decent, stand-up man, and we'd become close friends throughout the duration of their marriage. He seemed committed to Elise, always treating her with love and respect. I recall thinking how fortunate she was to have someone like him by her side, and they always seemed content together. That's why Elise's announcement that they were breaking up was so unexpected. She gave us a pretty vague justification. She stated that they were separating owing to irreconcilable disagreements, but she did not clarify further. Whenever anyone asked her for additional information, she simply stated that Lucas could no longer handle their marriage and stopped there. I got the impression that there was something we weren't being told, like a missing piece of the puzzle. But Elise didn't seem keen to address it, and I didn't want to press her for answers she wasn't prepared to provide. All I knew was that Elise needed assistance, and I wanted to help her in any way I could. I've even accompanied her to some of her ultrasound and gynecological appointments. Elise and Lucas have managed to keep a cordial relationship despite the fact that they are going through a divorce. That's probably why my sister chose to hold her baby shower in Lucas's new home. He had recently moved into a home with a wonderful backyard, and Elise thought it would be the ideal location for all of us to get together, relax, and celebrate her pregnancy. Elise invited me, our mother, and a few of our cousins out to lunch to help her arrange the baby shower. We were eager to be a part of the process because we always plan family gatherings together, and this baby shower felt especially meaningful. As we sat down for lunch, my cousins hugged me and reassured me over my miscarriage. Even though several months had gone, they were aware that grief is not something that can be easily overcome, especially when it comes to something as personal and heartbreaking as losing a kid. As women, I believe they understood what I was going through on a deeper level. They even complimented me on my bravery and selflessness in being there for Elise despite my own loss. However, as we spoke, I observed Elise's demeanor change. She rolled her eyes and told everyone to stop discussing such serious subjects during lunch. She suggested we should all move on from my experience. Her words stung somewhat. I didn't want to talk about it either, but she was reacting too coldly. I assumed she was just concerned about her baby shower and didn't want the subject to deviate from the joyous event we were meant to be organizing. Later that day, while I was dropping her off at her house, Elise joked that since my miscarriage, I had been always stealing the spotlight from her. Then she asked, half seriously, if I planned to do the same thing at her baby shower. Her reply caught me completely off guard. I asked her to explain what she meant by stealing her spotlight. Elise indicated that everyone seemed to be more interested with me than with her, and as a result, she felt overlooked. She explained that she did not want to feel this way during her baby shower. I immediately felt terrible and apologized to her. I told her that no one intended to make her feel less important, and that I would do my best to avoid bringing up my event during her baby shower. I did not want to ruin her special day or make her feel neglected in any way. Elise did not say much after that. She simply shook her head in disgust, and our chat ended abruptly. I understood that Elise needed to feel completely supported and loved during her pregnancy, especially given what she was going through with her divorce, but I had no idea that my loss had made her feel excluded. The baby shower was 3 days ago, and I did everything I could to keep the attention on Elise and her baby. I didn't want to draw attention to myself. This day was about Elise, and I wanted her to experience the love and support she earned. Despite my attempts, several people approached me throughout the event, giving me warm hugs and nice pats on the back. I know they intended good. However, with each hug or sympathetic gesture, I could feel Elise's gaze on me. She didn't say anything, but I could sense her discomfort and annoyance building. I didn't want to make the day about me, and I definitely didn't want to cause any trouble. I just wanted to enjoy the celebration to celebrate my sister and the baby she was bringing into the world, but I was acutely conscious of how Elise could interpret the scenario. During the event, I finally met Lucas after what seemed like an eternity. I hugged him, and he seemed really pleased to see me. Despite all that had happened between him and Elise, it felt like we were still on friendly terms. He even apologized for not being there for me after everything I had been through in the last few months, specifically the loss. I brushed it off, knowing that he and Elise were going through their own thing. Lucas had lost weight, and his mood had changed noticeably. He lacked the vivid enthusiasm he formerly possessed. Instead, his eyes contained a trace of melancholy. It made me question how he was really doing with the divorce and the changes in his life. Even though Elise had not gone into detail about their breakup, Lucas was clearly struggling in his own way. My husband Oliver had also attended the baby shower. So he, Lucas, and the other men stayed busy in the backyard, preparing barbecues and conversing. Everyone at Elise's baby shower brought thoughtful gifts for her and her soon-to-be baby. It was a happy environment as everyone gave their tokens of love and excitement for the young one. One of my relatives had knitted a lovely baby blanket. My father gave Elise a baby rocker, and my mother splurged on a beautiful new stroller, which Elise loved. For my gift, I decided to give her a couple of parenting books that had helped me during my pregnancy, as well as a baby shawl that had a special meaning to me. This shawl was the first thing I bought after learning I was pregnant. I recall seeing it while on a vacation to Istanbul, a delicate, beautifully woven shawl that I fell in love with right away. I bought it with great excitement, seeing myself enveloping my baby in it. When I lost the baby, the shawl turned bittersweet. It was connected to both my happiest memories and my deepest sadness. But I couldn't bring myself to simply throw it away. I wanted it to serve a purpose and contribute to something positive. So I thought it would bring me some peace to give it to Elise, in the hopes that her kid would benefit from it. In my mind, it was more than just a shawl. It was a gift full of love and optimism, and I hoped it would bring happiness to both of us. However, as Elise opened the present and took out the shawl, she froze. Her look changed from surprise to angry. She looked at the shawl as if it were soiled. Then she inquired, clearly frustrated, why I had brought it to her baby shower. I was perplexed and awkwardly attempted to explain that it was significant to me, and that I wanted her baby to have it. I assumed it was a personal present that would come in handy. Everyone else in the shower complimented the shawl's beauty, but Elise didn't seem to care. Her expression became angrier, and, to my surprise, she began accusing me of attempting to curse her baby with my gift. I was taken aback by her statements, so I inquired what she meant. But before she could respond, my mother, who had been watching the conversation, came out, saying it was wrong for me to give Elise something that was initially intended for my deceased kid. She explained that it was wrong to pass down something associated with a loss to a new generation. I was upset when she said that. I never wanted to insult or make my sister feel uncomfortable. I truly felt I was giving my sister something special and meaningful. I softly returned the shawl and apologized, attempting to maintain my composure in front of everyone, despite my inner turmoil. However, Elise, visibly angry, stood firm and told me that just because I had lost my kid did not mean I could now give those things to hers as hand-me-downs, and that her baby deserved more. Her words were cutting and cut deep, and I was almost in tears. This is when my husband, Oliver, intervened with a stern yet calm tone. He interrupted the conversation and addressed Elise directly. He made it obvious to her that my intentions were never to hurt or upset her, and that I had only given her the shawl to help her heal while also demonstrating how much I loved about her and her kid. Oliver then pointed out that if Elise didn't like the gift, she could have discussed it discreetly with me later. There was no need for her to demean and shame me in public. He admitted that the matter was sensitive, but he insisted that it did not justify her attitude, especially in front of all of our family and friends. Elise appeared surprised by Oliver's directness, and I could see the stress on her face. The remainder of the guests appeared uneasy, wondering what to say or do. One of my cousins, noticing the tension, intervened to support Oliver's stance. She advised Elise to let the situation go, implying that it was not worth pushing further. The whole event caught me completely off guard. Feeling discouraged, I offered to order something lovely for the kid and have it delivered later, hoping it would help bridge the gap. But Elise simply scoffed and told me not to bother. Her rage at me seemed out of proportion to the circumstances, and it saddened me to see my sister so furious with me over something that had truly came from my heart. I was beginning to feel sick to my stomach, overwhelmed with remorse and uncertainty about the entire situation. Fortunately, as my mother opened another gift, the attention switched and the discussion continued. But I couldn't shake the heaviness I was experiencing. I wanted the day to be a happy one for Elise, but all I could think about was how my present had accidentally caused this split. Later, after everyone had started serving themselves food, I decided to try to apologize to Elise again. I went to the kitchen and prepared a platter with her favorite mashed potatoes and chicken, exactly how she liked it. When I told her about it, I apologized again, hoping she would forgive me and understand how much I truly cared about her. But Elise hardly recognized me and removed the dish from my hands without saying anything. Feeling rejected, I went to sit near Oliver to find some comfort. We were dining quietly when we heard Elise cough loudly and again. We all turned to see her waving at her neck, her face red and puffy as she struggled to breathe. Panic washed over me as I knew something was severely wrong. I went to her side while my mother dialed 911, a sense of urgency in the air. All I could think about was getting her the assistance she needed. Paramedics arrived and my sister was transported to the hospital. My parents, Oliver, Lucas, and I went to the hospital to be with her. We were told by the medics that Elise had a serious allergic reaction. Now Elise is allergic to lobsters, and there were some at the BBQ, but Lucas told everyone that he had taken great care not to mix up the grills. I had served Elise a platter with simply mashed potatoes and chicken, so I was confident I hadn't given her anything hazardous. But after Elise had recovered and was coherent enough to speak, she began accusing me of poisoning her. She informed my parents that I was the one who brought her food after she insulted me for my present, thus I could have done anything to her meal that caused her allergic response. I was utterly perplexed. How could she have predicted that I would do anything so malicious? I insisted that I would never harm her or her baby, and it seemed inconceivable to me that she would even consider it. However, she refused to trust me. In a moment of wrath, she yelled at me to leave her hospital room. Oliver and I exchanged astonished glances before hastily leaving, not wanting to aggravate the situation anymore. Since that day, things has gotten out of control. My folks, side with Elise, blamed me for the entire episode. They believe I put her and her kid in risk, and other family members are aware of the situation. Suddenly I'm accused of being envious of Elise's pregnancy, and maybe I let that envy cloud my judgment and injure Elise. The idea that I would ever act on those feelings in such a terrible way seems ludicrous to me. Nonetheless, many seem to believe it. My only sin is serving her that platter of food. I swear I never offered her any lobsters, but nevertheless, I'm being blamed for everything. It is making me feel extremely guilty. And now my parents want me to admit everything and apologize to Elise. They claim that I am causing unnecessary stress for my sister by exacerbating the problem when she is already vulnerable due to her pregnancy. I'd argue that if I don't apologize to Elise, I'm not the reason she was poisoned. Update 1. Wow, I didn't anticipate my post to go viral. In a few days I've received hundreds of direct messages from strangers. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has expressed their condolences for my loss. Your kindness meant everything to me. I also appreciate that many people understood why I gave the shawl to Elise. I sincerely wanted to offer her something lovely and important, and I didn't expect her to take it badly. She is definitely resentful of me for the attention I've received as a result of my miscarriage. I wish she had talked to me about it and handled her feelings instead of letting them fester. Now, to address the major issue, I have refused to apologize and have stood by my words. Elise took to social media to publicly accuse me of attempting to poison her food. She claims she has always been there for me, but I am continuously attempting to overshadow her, implying that my jealousy of her pregnancy drove me to behave this way during her baby shower. Reading her post has made me feel humiliated. To put an end to this, Lucas has asked everyone to his house, urging that we confront the topic face to face before the baby arrives, and complicates everything even further. My parents have contacted me and encouraged me to attend, but Oliver and I are not sure. Update 2. How the tables have turned. So, Oliver and I reluctantly agreed to join Lucas and Elise for a sit-down as a last desperate attempt to resolve matters. My parents were also present, hoping to help. Elise began by demanding that I publicly confess and admit that I had poisoned her. I sneered at her charge and was about to reject it again when Lucas stood up and announced that he had something to show us all. So guess what? Lucas had cameras planted throughout his house, filming everything that happened at the baby shower. He decided to show us the footage to clear things up once and for all. We viewed the recording, and it showed me feeding Elise exactly as I had described. There were no lobsters in sight. The video showed Elise eating and speaking with others. However, in the middle of her meal, she began glancing around and constantly requested sauce. One of my cousins had some sauce on her plate and suggested Elise dip her chicken in it. Elise's use of the sauce from her dish was probably not a good choice given that her cousin was eating lobster. My sister foolishly dipped her chicken in the sauce. Elise started coughing moments later. Her allergic response was certainly caused by that sauce. As the video played, I noticed my parents' faces pale as they processed what had just happened. They understood Elise had been blaming me for something that was entirely out of my control, and they had been siding with her. Elise began to fight, struggling to support her arguments. She stated that there was no guarantee that her reaction was caused by eating off my cousin's plate, and that I may have mixed something into her food beforehand. However, owing to Lucas, my parents no longer believed her. I yelled at Elise for openly defaming me on social media when she was the one to blame. My husband then threatened her, stating we would use the tape and sue her for false charges if she did not remove her social media post right away. My parents' faces were filled with remorse as they turned to me, and their eyes were filled with sympathy. They apologized for wrongfully blaming me. However, I pointed out to my parents that they were fast to back my sister, and even if there was no evidence, they would have probably continued to support her. I turned to my mother and asked if she would go around and clear the matter with other family members, as she had been one of the most vocal in blaming me. I believed that everyone should know the truth, especially given the extent of the devastation. However, my mother tried to brush it off. She claimed that nobody cared about who was right or wrong in this situation. What mattered was that I was no longer involved in what had happened to Elise. I thought that was extremely unjust. I informed her that if she didn't take the initiative to correct the record and acknowledge Elise's personal responsibility for her allergic reaction, I wouldn't be able to have a genuine relationship with them. My parents kept attempting to de-escalate the issue without fully realizing their own responsibility. Oliver and I eventually departed the premises after obtaining a copy of the tape from Lucas and thanking him for sharing the truth. Since then, my sister has removed her post from social media, but my mother has yet to explain what happened. So I'm pretty pissed off at her for allowing me to be depicted as the villain in this circumstance. Update 3. Thank you for your suggestions. In response to everything, I resolved to give Elise a taste of her own medicine. I relayed the footage Lucas had presented and explained how my sister and dad had wrongfully accused me of her allergic response. I said how Elise was reckless enough to eat from someone else's plate, essentially poisoning herself. The video, as expected, caused quite a sensation. Many family members who first supported Elise and blamed me have phoned back to apologize. Some are even mocking her now, outraged that she placed herself in risk and blamed me without proof. I intend to remove the video soon, now that the damage has been done. My folks have regularly phoned me, but I've ignored them. Oliver and I have agreed to maintain minimal contact with the family until my parents admit their mistakes.